Live from the Pathway Studios in Johnston proper. You are live from the Path.
And you're listening to Live from the Path. We're coming from the Pathway Studios here in Johnston proper.
We've been listening to that thing for years. I still don't have a clue any of the words. I just sit there and listen to it. And I go, yeah.
I just know I am a working man. Oh, yes, I am. I'm a special agent of the Lamb.
I didn't even go that far. I know the working man. I go, yeah, that's me.
He
Yeah.
says, I'm going to wear something, then I'm going to wear your robe. Like, hey, man, only in a Jesus culture can you get away saying something. I'm going to wear your robe. Because it's not cool in any other place. Like, you can't, like, walk up in a hotel and say that. Even though they're giving it to you, it's still creepy. You can't walk up to a friend or relative. I'm going to wear your robe.
Yeah.
Playboy Mansion.
No,
That'd
don't
be
touch
kind
my
of
robe.
offensive, probably. He's like, no, that's my robe.
That's not the same. Yeah,
Right,
not
that's
the same
my
thing.
robe. You don't touch it.
Yeah.
If it's monogrammed
Didn't
and
he
it isn't
die?
your name,
Yeah, he
I was
did.
thinking so.
like a year,
I was thinking.
sometime within the
turned out.
last 100 years.
I mean, I didn't put it in my calendar or anything.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't
It's not
celebrate
tracking
that
it.
anniversary.
Yeah.
Oh, Hugh.
All right, you're listening Live from the Path. Hey, so I checked the complaint line.
Oh,
Yes.
buddy.
With no responses.
Oh,
I
come
figured
on,
it'd be right
guys.
off the hook.
So here's, I
We
just,
gave you free reign to complain about all the tomfoolery that
there's
it
no,
has for
there's,
years.
no one's listening. That's got to be the
I
problem.
understand that, but like a boy can dream.
There's no way that someone listened to the show and said, I don't have any complaints.
Yeah, you would have to listen to the show to complain about said.
I mean, people keep subscribing. You think someone's listening?
No, that's true. We got
didn't we
our
just-
our 1,000th subscriber on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
a
mean,
big deal.
That's
we
Thanks
should've-
to the 1,000 of you that don't complain with it, to it.
We should like throw a party.
Oh yeah.
Hey man.
Oh
did
no,
you-
we needed there were two criteria on YouTube for parties. There, it was 1,000 subscribers and 1 million hits.
I thought
million
we got
views.
both those.
No, 1 million. We're still shy of the 1 million views, probably by I want to say 20 or 30,000.
We got to do another cash for sale or something
Yeah.
because that deals the business. We're only 40,000 away. Wait, does that mean that we get the party in 40,000 views?
Yeah. As soon as we cross the 1 million threshold, then we'll put a shindig together.
I'll bring cheese and crackers.
There,
And
Dave.
that was the stipulation. Like that was our stipulation. That was YouTube.
That was my stipulation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying like YouTube will throw us a party. I was thinking that was kind of cool.
No, they sent us an email.
They did say,
I
yeah,
assume
I think that might be
computer
an automated
generated.
email.
Like it's not a guy going, "Hey,
Like from a
you
friend.
guys are doing a great job."
Right. Did you see the sticker that had the two bananas
Before
on
you.
that? What was that? This is bananas?
Yeah.
Come on, YouTube.
I feel like they didn't even put any thought into it.
No, they really didn't. I think they still use word art for that too. Like, they used Microsoft Word 97.
Yeah.
Put a couple clip arts of bananas up there and hey, nice job on 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
You're not worth any new subscription to Microsoft Office.
Right.
I figure they need us.
Yeah, we're keeping them afloat. Definitely.
Right, exactly. Like, what else are people watching on the YouTube besides us?
Yeah, I don't understand.
We're
All right. So anyway, if let's say you were complaining that we wasted the first, say, 3.5 minutes of the show,
That's a fair complaint.
give us a call, 515-517-0085, or we take the text. You can shoot us a text as well. And I mean, that's all. It's no charge to me. So go ahead and load that beast up. Let me hear what you really think about life.
Ben, do you know my number by heart?
Your phone number?
Yes.
No, I have no idea.
Perfect.
No.
Just wondering.
That has nothing to do with the previous conversation. Don't worry about it at all.
No. Yeah.
I just
no.
wanted to test your memory and see if you were a good friend and had my phone number.
No,
memorized.
and sometimes I've even forgotten what I put you under my phone as. It is under John Boover III.
That's
So-
phenomenal. I can appreciate that.
All right, so here's what we got going on the show tonight. So we got some advice, some stacked up. Since Mike's gone, I'm going to handle the doling out of the secular questions, and we'll see if we can give decent advice. And I did have a question. So after we talked last week, we talked about habits, like a habit that you were trying to grab, and things changing. And it made me kind of think about another question that I had this week was, as you've in your walk with Jesus, is there anything that you've changed your mind on, that you feel like your mind has been changed about over time? And I mean, it's a pretty broad question, and so like I don't have any specific parameters to it, except for, is it related to your walk with Jesus? And I don't even know that I want to imply it's a maturity thing. It's just over time. Like if I were to ask you the same question 15 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever, Is there something that you think about differently than you used to?
I
And
was
so,
gonna say 15 years ago I was 12. There's probably a lot different. Ways.
yeah. Okay, whatever. Take whatever reasonable amount of time since
All
you
right,
first
cool
said
beans.
yes to Jesus, and then like things have kind of altered for you.
I can dig on.
So we're gonna talk about that. And there was an article, Dan. So did I see you were on a different radio show today talking about Sabbath, right?
Right.
So it was interesting because there was a so I didn't watch it. Did it come? There was an article about in Christianity Today about giving Sabbath a rest. Did you guys talk about that at all?
No, it didn't.
Okay, sweet. So 'cause I didn't want to steal that cover. You can go listen to that. Phil's talking about that. But it was interesting because like I didn't realize we talked about the Sabbath before, and like the core of this article. Let me just read a little bit to you, and we'll see what you think. So it says, I've not heard of this. I grew up in a Sabbatarian religion. Have you heard of that?
No.
In a religion that
I mean, it seems like a lie.
I think they just made it up.
yeah.
Or so Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah. So like, I like it's a strict. It said we practice Sabbath observance as a matter of law. You could just say we Jewish. I mean, or Messianic Jew or something. I don't. Anyway, there's some kind of distinction they're making. It says my religious community was conscious of the minute that the sun set on a Friday evening. Yeah, Friday evening. See.
Yeah.
Jewish.
yeah, it's
That's-
Jewish.
But there's Christians doing that. We had one here for a while.
Really? That observes that?
The
Yeah,
Friday
like years ago.
sundown.
Dean, remember Dean? I don't remember his last name.
Oh yes.
Yeah. They took us. They did all the feasts
Yeah.
and they did the Sabbath.
Really?
I
Well,
mean,
so
every week.
I know
Sabbath.
some Messianic Jews that do that,
Yeah, these are not Jews.
but they're not Jews. They wouldn't say they were Jews.
That's
They
like
were
straight
Christians.
up like I am still under the. Sorry, I'm getting off my.
I
I'm
mean,
getting off.
they celebrated grace, but they.
Okay,
It's just
all right,
big.
fair.
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
thought they should.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It said we made sure that moment didn't catch us still at work or at the grocery store. It was expected that we would make every effort to ensure we were adequately prepared to rest from physical labors. Our homes and cars were cleaned, errands were run, and food was prepared. Some ironed their dress clothes for church the next day. As a child, I remember getting Vaseline and a paper towel and shining my black patent leather church shoes. When the sun set, we welcomed in the Sabbath with worship, song, scripture, and prayer, marking the beginning of a sacred 24 hours. We were constantly reminded of John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. We interpreted this to mean, if you love God, keep the 10 commandments. Keeping the Sabbath was the fourth commandment. Therefore, if you weren't giving it your best shot, then you were showing God, yourself, and your community how little you loved him. This mindset was not rest. In fact, Sabbath was taxing on the conscience. So, I mean, as it sits, what's your reaction to that interpretation? So, like, I mean, rightly, it does say, if you love me, keep my commandments. Frankly, I think it's wrong to release the 10 commandments from that. I think it's still a God's character thing in it.
Yeah.
But they said, but we're trying to do it, and we find that it is not restful.
I mean, Jesus still said that the Sabbath was man, not man for the Sabbath.
Right.
And I think that's where they got. They were made for Sabbath. That's when it becomes taxing, stressful. Comes higher than the purpose of Sabbath, which.
Right. When you are so focused on the rules and on the observing of the Sabbath from the perspective of focused more on the what I can't do and how to not do what I can't do, are on the concept of this is meant to be rest that my Father has given me, and I actually rest that perspective and spend time in worship to Him and refocusing. If you're so focused on those rules, then I think you're missing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, just like you said, when Jesus talks about man was not made. King David's out in the food. Was he wrong and all that stuff?
I wonder, my first reaction would be is that if you say, hey, God, if Jesus this was made from man, it's a gift. Sabbath has always been a gift, right? And your reaction is that it takes, hey, this feels like work. I don't know that I'd jump to the thought that say, hey, the Sabbath doesn't apply to me. I'd be like, maybe you're not doing it right, or you're overdoing it. Because I would expect that gifts from God feel like gifts, and like it's possible that as opposed to saying, oh, this may not apply to me anymore, we say, hey, maybe I'm approaching this gift incorrectly. Anyway, so he keeps going. My upbringing, in short, taught me how to work for my salvation. Okay, fundamental error. I know what it felt like in my soul to wonder if I would measure up and make it to heaven. Was I trying hard enough? Could I try harder? Was I confessing sin so it would be forgiven? Now, that does sound like Seventh-day Adventist. Was I sincerely striving to please God? I believe my eternal life depended on the answers to these questions. I was convinced that the particular way I kept Sabbath was required to earn God's favor. Yeah, okay, so let's deal with that. Even it doesn't have to be Sabbath specifically, but in general, what we do was required to earn God's favor. That's a no, right? Like
Right.
that's not how we're earning God's favor. I would make the case though that I believe you're missing out on God's blessing. However, like the actual to the extent that it exists in the here and now, God has laid out a way to live that otherwise you benefit from. Even in sometimes in an upside down world type of way where like you have peace when you shouldn't. And you have calm and joy, and then you are patient and become steadfast, and ultimately become confident in God's character and His provision, and so you can make your way through situations which other folks don't handle very well. And so I would say it is not your effort to be saved, but it is through your faithfulness to what God has called you that you actually get to experience a lot of what He has promised, and to the extent that you don't say. Take part in His gift of rest, I don't know that I'd be super surprised that you're not rested, right? That if you don't take part in His gift, you don't take part in His gift. And so I wonder if it's an overreaction to things to say like it's not, hey, either you don't do this at all or you're earning your salvation. Like those are not the choices on the table. I think that's an arbitrary, like a false comparison. All right. But in my late 20s, God began to show me that His love, care, and design for my life had nothing to do with my efforts to keep the law. I started believing in grace and started letting go of an earn your keep relationship with God. But Sabbath for me was still a hindrance to fully trusting Jesus only for my salvation. It had also become a source of pride. Ignoring the admonition in Colossians 2, I judged others' faithfulness and right standing before God based upon their Sabbath practices. What if I tell you to let go of the very thing that you think you have to hold? Will you trust me? These words were from gospel artist Donnie McClurkin's song, I'll Trust You, Lord, rang in my ear. To begin to trust God fully, I had to let go of my spiritual safety net. The law had led me to Christ, and now I needed to live by the Spirit. And that's when I experienced rest. This rest had nothing to do with a day or a break from my regular routine. So that's interesting, though. Do we think, based upon how Jesus treats the Sabbath, does it not actually still seem like it's something like that? Or no? Right. Does Jesus? Let me ask you, the question is: does Jesus treat Sabbath like it's some sort of like it's a mindset?
Yeah, like a mindset, not a list of rules. And my mind was just did a big study on birth of the Pharisees and how they came up with all these. They had 121 rules surrounding that particular law of Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
There was one law, oral traditions of 1,521
Yep.
rules how not to break the Sabbath.
Yep.
That was more work not breaking it than.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? But Jesus is just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and eat. Sorry.
Yeah. So
it was a mindset of rest, but
yeah. So but I guess that's what I'm saying is that like it's still. I don't know that I get the impression that Jesus is like, take it or leave it. Right. Like,
Right.
I don't
No,
think He's looking
absolutely
at a
not.
gift from
He-
God and going, it's not necessarily a thing. And when He says when it's made for man, I don't know that He's saying, I think it is still an intentional, like a cyclical intentional thing.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Of rest, as opposed to like, oh, if I give this up, then I can truly find rest because I'm no longer being so pharisaical about laws. I think we run risk when the way that we look at law, or the way that the Old Testament law functioned. If you bundle it all up, and I say I chuck it all because I don't get to heaven, I'm not saved with that. Because that's true, but I don't know that implicitly describes that these aren't still things of which are reveal God's character and are appropriate ways to live, right? Reflect what our here and now looks like. And so maybe the reaction I'm having to this is to say, hey, I know they're convinced that we're bound to set aside a day of rest. It's like I don't. I mean, I think you don't have to do that, and that doesn't mean that you're not saved. But I would say that I feel like you might still be missing out.
Yeah, I think it's okay to hold the fact that Christ came to fulfill the law, and that's an important thing, and that is part of it. Sabbath is, but that doesn't mean that we don't still we don't still uphold the tenets, exist within a relationship with Christ, so that we understand that this does show us the nature of God. The law is something that does show us who God is and his character, and it explains a lot of what he looks in his people, in his kingdom. And I think this is a big part of that. It's understanding that, if we are so focused on the hustle and bustle and world, things of this world, and we don't ever take time to rest and look at it to recenter to where God is, which is the more important part. I think that's where we run that risk is we may not be under the law still. The law may be fulfilled, and Sabbath being part of that, but that doesn't mean that we don't still uphold the concept that God does want us to rest from things that happen here, centered in prayer and meditation and focus. And I think that was one of the biggest things that at least I've taken from is the heart of what that Sabbath was about, was rest from worldly things and making certain that not only it's not like we push our relationship with God week, but it's a point of and it's a point of
reboot day.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a point of realigning our week to be starting off fresh, ending with Christ, ending with God, and starting with God at the same time. And so I think that we are still subject to that portion, but if it's something that we're doing pharisaitically and we're doing it from the perspective of this is law and it doesn't matter the relationship behind it, it's just rules to avoid hell rather than a relationship to find hell.
He said, as I transitioned away from Sabbatarian theology, I was no longer convinced that Christians are bound to set aside a day of rest. Yet, I didn't have to look far to find a book, article, or sermon trying to persuade me that the cure for an anxious heart was a Sabbath escape from work, chores, and technology. According to a 2016 poll, 62% of Americans still agree that it's important for society to have one day a week set aside for spiritual rest. But it didn't make sense to me that one could keep the law without being legalistic. And so that's the part, I guess, where I'm struggling with, because, I don't know that it's legalistic to try to conform yourself to God's character. And so, if the laws are expressions of God's character, or even, Jesus kept the Sabbath. And so, right, and frankly, early Christians did too, but in the grace that otherwise Jesus provides, right? So it's a different day, but it's still a day of focus and spiritual stuff. And so their gut reaction wasn't to bolt from it. Neither was that the gut reaction of Gentiles that are entering the church. They're not bolting from it either. And so I think we got to be careful here of calling something a law that some of those things that we looked at as laws that otherwise we felt like governed relationship, that part has changed. But to the extent that behaviors or dictations of law are reflections of God's character, you're not being legalistic by trying to conform to it.
Yeah, because this was way pre-law, even, as well as being part of the law.
You're right. That's creation,
Genesis.
right? Sabbath is creation.
Yeah, day 7. It was it's been part of his character. And I look at it more as okay, I'm the designer. I know how you guys are wired. I know how you work. Hey, let me do you a favor. Go ahead and rest today. I know that gets you that you can be more productive, more sharper, have more energy, all that stuff. He just knows that, and we tend to ignore it. And then that's what makes kind of dulls down. Evan, who had the big sharpen the saw thing, that when you have all this, rather than working harder, you need to just sharpen your saw and do it well.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what a Sabbath does. It sharpens your physical body.
So he says, there's an answer to this. So there are 4 major views on Sabbath. 3 of those views, we see Sabbath as a function of time by ascribing biblical meaning to Saturday or Sunday, or simply emphasizing the principle of resting from work on a weekly basis. The other perspective, which is I assume where this character falls, views the Sabbath command as fulfilled in Christ. I think we're missing out of the law as grace by talking about it this way. It sees the Old Testament law as if it was never a grace for his people of identity and a way to live consistent with his character.
Right, it was only a burden.
Right, and I think Paul rightly understands the law as a burden when it comes to being something that you have to, that makes it feel like that is how you are made right with God. And Jesus does relieve that, but this might be a baby in bathwater, I think, way of looking at the Sabbath. But he says, when we view the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament, over and over we see how sacrifices, feasts, rituals, and even people like Moses pointed forward to Jesus. For example, the Israelites had real physical miraculous manna from heaven that they depended on for survival. Generations later, as the story was passed down, those hearing Jesus describe himself as the true bread from heaven and the bread of life understood the reference. The Word became flesh. The Sabbath is no exception to this pattern. Jesus came to flesh out the full meaning of this law, says Craig Blumberg, distinguished professor of New Testament at Denver Seminary. What jumps out at me more than anything else in Matthew chapter 11 is that he is the one who provides the rest. He provides it not because we do something different on a certain day of the week. He provides it as we turn to him 24/7. The idea of Sabbath-like rest through faith in Jesus, described in Hebrews 3 and 4, and the rest in Jesus the Old Testament Sabbath foreshadowed, mentioned in Colossians 2, resonates with me. For more than 30 years, my week was bookended by the Sabbath, in quotes. Observance was one of my religious community's non-negotiables, because shopping, work, studying, sporting events, and more were off limits. I had been acutely aware of time virtually standing still while the rest of the world swirled outside of my bubble. Sabbath was more than a day, it was an aura. There were sights, sounds, and smells associated with the sacred time. It was what Jewish scholar Abraham Joshua Heschel called a palace in time. I can understand how some are attracted to Sabbath practices. But I knew the work involved in preparing to rest, and from experience, I knew a weekly day of rest would not eliminate business, workaholism, or a restless heart. The cure for those things was found in resting in Jesus. What could be sweeter than having a palace in time every week, living in that palace full time? That's what rest in Jesus is about. For me, it wasn't about a day anymore. It was about letting go of the shadow to experience the reality. Jesus was the oasis of rest in spite of the relentless madness happening around me. Here's weird, I guess. I don't disagree with what he's saying.
Right.
I don't think it's a both and. I just don't
Yeah.
I don't think it's elimination.
I can see if you are bound to the traditions of the Sabbath that were placed on by Pharisees, and all the things surrounding what was actually biblical, to the very, very strict way to look at it that eventually happened within the oral traditions. I can see that is, if that's your Sabbath, that's totally understandable that you're trying to break from that. It's totally understandable that you're trying to find that rest in Jesus every day rather than running into those traditions. But I think if you orient yourself, what I would say rightly, from the perspective of, we are not meant to uphold all of the Pharisaical traditions of the Sabbath, but to understand that it is a Sabbath meant for rest for man, so that we can recenter our relationship with God, then it's not really a burden. I think we are released from the burden of the law. That doesn't mean that we don't follow certain tenets of it. We don't find ourselves aligning with it, because, like you said, it is a revealing of God's character through the law, not just the burden of sin through the law. And I think if we're looking at it from that perspective, it's not something we need to worry about. It's not something that we're held down by the Sabbath, and I can't watch football on the Sabbath, or I can't go and go to a restaurant with my family on the Sabbath because I'm getting out of my house and I'm working. If you're held by those traditions, yeah, I can totally understand trying to find a solace from that. But when you break from that and break from that understanding and start looking at it from a more wide Jesus understanding of it, it's not a burden that you have to break from, and it's not something you have to run away from. And I think that's what some people may be running into.
Okay. Anyway, so having spoke upon Sabbath earlier in the day, I don't know, Dan, any other lessons or thoughts on this?
Honestly, we were coming from the other angle of most of us just ignore.
Okay, right, yeah.
And it's more of a, hey, take Sabbath.
Oh yeah.
Find some rest. Get some type of a pattern of rest. Some portion of every day, some portion. Because we for that, we're not beyond it. So we were probably more looking at the off at it. I had mentioned this like one of the acceptable church rest. Applaud that.
Yeah.
And he's great.
Yeah,
There's
right.
Fellowship.
Well, there was, yeah.
I thought I do both. So I'm celebrated.
Thanks for that smack to the face. Oh, man.
All right. Well, there it is. Yeah, I get it. I get it, but yeah, it feels like baby in bathwater, and I do think we run trying not to feel like we're earning our salvation doesn't mean there isn't still a way that is just right to live, and your Creator knows it. And so, like, that's a lot of the rejection of some of the Reformed view of calling most of the New Testament is saying here's how to live. Like, if you so you certainly Jesus, like, in the Gospels is talking about this, but like anything past the Gospels is basically answering the question. All right, then look at all this that happened. Now what do we do? How do we live now?
Right.
And so, like, I wouldn't. It's not. And the New Testament answers that. In trying to point you to what are the characters, what's God's character, how did Jesus live? Then let's do that. And like to miss that, like when we say that the law was fulfilled in Jesus, it's because Jesus becomes it. Like his life becomes the new law, of which then we, then we rely on to keep us in right relationship with God because of what He's done. But then we also rely on as an example of what it looks like to live faithfully to God's character on the earth. And so. I think we got to be careful about throwing things around and be like, hey, we're being legalistic about trying to be like Jesus. I mean, technically, yeah, that's true. If Jesus is the new law, then yeah, I'm being a legalist and saying I want to be that way.
Right.
But you've tried to use that negatively, and I reject the negativity around it. I want to be that way because it's right and good, and it does good things in the world, and it helps me be part of good things that God is doing in the world. And so it's not don't throw baby out with the bathwater here. There's a reason the New Testament spends a lot of time on, well, how then should we live? Because it actually cares. It cares about how you live.
Hey, man. What's going on with this baby and bathwater thing you've said like 6 times now?
Is that not a familiar phrase?
No, it is not to me.
It said, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater."
What does that mean?
It means don't get rid unintentionally get rid of something that was valuable just because you're chucking something that you think is invaluable.
Hey, I dig it. I like that.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
throw the baby out with the bathwater.
The water's all dirty. You're like, man, we really got to clean this water up.
Yeah.
Just throw the whole thing out. Now you lost the baby too.
You forgot the baby was in there
Oh,
because the water was so
Whoops.
dirty.
Oh, man, that's terrible. Yeah. Okay, I can dig on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to start using that
Okay.
from time to time.
starting tomorrow.
Okay. All right. So
Not on the Sabbath.
from reaching back from today as far back into time as you're willing to do, what have you changed your mind on? Has anything changed in how you think about something or what you think? Dan, do you got anything at the top of the mind?
I do, and I think it's in process because I don't know where to land on some of this, and it has to.
Yeah.
I probably because I grew up in a pretty messed up family. When I was 18, college years, I really focused on learning family, and everything I was absorbing had a picture of the perfect family,
Right.
a husband and a wife and children, and just never break from that. And that's just how it should always be. Anything less than that is imperfect, and it's just not good, not healthy. And then, I mean, it wasn't even all that long ago. Within the last 10 years, you read through all the scriptures and think, well, wait a minute, a lot of these families were totally messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple wives and children and blended families and so as I say, I've changed, but I'm not like saying, hey, it's a great idea to mess up your family,
Right,
have
right.
affairs and stuff like that. I'm just saying maybe somewhere in there, my expectation, or maybe I'm gonna debate myself. My expectations are still high for people. Maybe my grace is never judged people. That's what I say. I don't know where I've landed.
Yeah, right.
I'm softer. With situations that are in or have been in or that are less than perfect, because I can't even think of a perfect family in the Bible.
Right.
I mean, it probably is. I'm just at the moment. I'm just like,
I mean, the Bible is stories of fallen people, man.
I mean, messed up.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Abraham, man, messed up. Isaac, yeah, messed up. Jacob, yep.
Some of our
12
most celebrated
kids,
stories are people that are like, oh,
Yeah.
man, didn't that guy have a dude's or a wife's dude killed?
I mean, yeah,
Like-
yeah. And so I think, and I was celebrating an elevated, maybe the goal of what every family, what every people want. You go into a marriage wanting to stay together forever.
Right.
And I don't know. See, I don't know. See, I'm still fuzzy, obviously, because I don't know where to land that. but it's in a flux
Yeah.
somewhere.
I think I know what you're. I think I get what you're saying. It's like without understanding, without giving up the right understanding of what it looks like when it's rightly oriented, or without trying to make it sound like you were being harsh with it before, because there was always grace to it. There is simply a recognition of a wider expanse of gray on what is actually going on. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. I mean, I'm still like in my relationship with my wife. There is literally nothing she can do that would make me leave her. You know, it might be really hard to forgive her, or it might be really challenging. But I would have to. In my understanding of God, God's heart is for my heart to be soft toward her.
Yep.
Even if she like completely does terrible things.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not talking about physically abusive, but I mean like cheats on me or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, we'd figure out how to work that out, and I would forgive her and move forward or something. But then we have that trust, so like I don't see that happening. But that's where I am.
Yeah.
But I don't judge someone who's in a similar situation and then says, "Oh, that's the excuse I'm with."
Right.
Let him go. That's usually the situation. They're like, "Phew, I'm sure glad they had the affair because I was trying to get rid of the turd."
Uh-huh.
And I can't believe how many times I've had that conversation. I'm like, I don't think you get the heart,
right?
You know, of what Scripture's saying there.
Right. That is a legalist understanding. That is not really the core of what
You're
God's
not supposed
character
to high
stuff.
five that your husband had an affair because you finally have a godly reason to leave him.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, somewhere in that mess, there is a slightly different perspective. Anyway.
Okay. Move.
I've been sitting here thinking on it because there are two things that keep kind of pile driving in my prevalent. Understanding evangelism. So when, I first started, I mean, I've been in the church for a long time, but, I remember going through classes when I was a kid on evangelism that was involving, I don't know if you guys know about the $1 million bill, but it's a $1 million bill that you would leave with like a waitress or a waiter as a tip, and it had scripture on the back of it. And so, like, it's $1 million bill, and so it catches somebody's eye. And then you, like, look at it, and it's got a bunch of scripture,
great.
and it's like, oh, man, like, that's really cool. Like, that's a funny way to bring Jesus into somebody's life and stuff like that. And I remember evangelism, that was the extent of it, was how do I trick someone into reading the Bible, and when they read the Bible, the transformative property of God will show up, which it certainly exists. Transformative property of the Spirit is a real thing. The Bible is the living Word of God, and I believe in it from that perspective. But it kind of takes a lot of the work out for it for me, because all I have to do then is leave behind a piece of paper rather than do actual work. And there's really nothing biblical for that says go forth and leave pieces of paper in your wake that have verses about me that not really explain anything. And so my thoughts have morphed and evolved and matured, if you will, from that hands-off way of evangelism that's like I gotcha moment to, well, no, it doesn't happen in that moment. It's building relationships with people. And it's also making yourself in a place where you are walking in faith and walking in the light of Christ, and people then see you and see your life, and it becomes impossible for them not to notice the transformative property of Christ through that. Rather than leaving behind a piece of paper that's $1 million bill that somebody goes, oh, that's kind of crazy, we've never seen that before, and then they read John 3:16 to, I'm going to live my life in a Christ-centered way so that when people see me on a daily basis, or even see me go through trials, or see me interacting with my brothers and sisters, or, a non-believer, they take notice of Christ in my life, and they see the light of Jesus through my actions and my living, rather than things like leaving behind a piece of paper. And so it really kind of took evangelism from that perspective of, oh, I can make this happen in somebody else's life without putting any real work in on my own, to, no, if I want to be a good evangelist and be good about, going and showing people the life of Christ, the light of Christ and the power of God, I need to show it through my own life, not just through even intentional acts like doing things like that, like showing up to a soup kitchen. Are you really showing the light of Christ by showing up and ladling in some soup into a bowl? Are you showing the light of Christ by being that light in the world and then starting and building relationships with people? You know, there's biblical precedents for running into a guy. You know, Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, you run into a guy and then God uses you in that moment and then they walk away and they're just saved. And we don't hear about anything after that story, but there's also a biblical precedent for building relationships with people and sticking around and not just going for the one-time moment, going for the, well, I'm here with you the whole time. I'm here with you through the whole process.
The long-term commitment,
right,
to bring you on this journey.
Right, and I think so. So if I were to say something that's matured the most, it would be.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense, and I think it's like the interesting in a similar way. I've ended up on a both and, right? Like yeah, we need people to hang out at the soup kitchen, and you know, sometimes we just need people to ladle the soup. Like it's
right.
It's like trying to confine all that. Like I think that's one of the risks that we constantly run is like there's such a wide such a wide question to ask of God, which is how do we live, right? And so like there's a wide expanse of answers that fit numerous situations, and so it's when you box your theology in and say, well, based upon this one thing, this is what I think saves the day. You run the risk like of not seeing the world in its entirety, and so like I would say that's something that has changed over time for me is being more aware of that and trying to be careful about like recognize that there's not a one thing, there's not a one way, there's not a of which God expresses Himself through the work of His people, and so like to be very careful about looking at the way God is doing things and being like, man, I'm not sure that's right. Like again, fits within the boundaries of Scripture. And so like that actually fits with the core thing that I was going to say, which is, and this is gone one way and then kind of back the other direction a little bit, is kind of our understanding of actions of work. And so I think when I was little, my concept of was be good, go to heaven, and that's not actually even the fault of the way that people teach. Really, it's just sometimes that's what kids can latch onto, right? Like they latch onto practical things, and they say, and frankly, parents, this is on us. Sometimes that's what we reinforce from our understanding of church is like, you shouldn't lie, Jesus would be upset. I'm like, well, it's not quite right, but that's what kids tend to latch onto. And then I think as I became older, right, it starts to latch on to the right theology, which says, look, I can't earn my salvation, and like, I can't earn, what I do doesn't matter. That's not right either. That's not the right bucket. And then to basically where I am now, and I suppose I'm open to continuing to mature in this area, which is similar to the discussion we just had about the Sabbath, which is I know very, very well indeed that I'm not allowed in the party on my own. I have a right relationship with God because Jesus has done what He's done. However, in response to that, it is for the good of the world and for myself to conform as much as possible to God's character and the example of Jesus. And so it matters what you do. And so I think that has been a transition for me, I guess, over time, and like depending on when you. Hello? Okay. We're going to take a quick pause. Hold tight for just a second. Okay, welcome back. Sorry about that. Yeah, anyway, that might perhaps that's the Lord saying you babble on about that too often.
You said I get it.
Yeah. Okay, that's enough. Yeah, work. We understand. So yeah, I think anyway I think that's the thing that sticks out for the transition for me. All right. Good,
Yeah, man.
good.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Wait, that's not the right way.
You're listening live from the path. Hey, I don't know if there's something for you, like something that you has changed substantially for you over the last whatever amount of time. Let us know. Give us. I'm going to assume it's a complaint. Give us a call on the complaint line, 515-517-0085, or same thing. You can give us a text, 515-517-0085. That's a live from the path complaint line. We'd love to be able to hear from you, share your story, and Maybe it's on Sabbath. Maybe you got some commentary on what we were talking about the Sabbath. Maybe we got it wrong. We're nailing it down. Say, look, you really should still have a day. And you're like, nah, forget it. It's in my mind. The Lord Jesus gives me peace in my mind. I don't need to take a breath. I just ride this exercise bike all the time, and the Lord bring me peace on it. Maybe that's the thing.
Sounds awful.
That's why it's a complaint. We got it way wrong. All right, good. Let's do some. What's this? Hold on. Rebirth of Jerusalem-based Christianity will be greater than Protestant Reformation. No, I don't care about that. I don't remember what it was. I don't think it's necessary. What did I close out the deer rabbits?
Hey, man.
Hold on.
You were responsible for the deer life in the path.
I'm working on it. I had him up.
Well, I'd hope so.
And then I lost him.
It's understandable. It's okay. When in Rome.
Okay, here we go.
Wait, I used that one wrong too.
Dear Life from the Path, my husband John recently returned from his 4th Middle East tour after having been gone for a year. As soon as he got back, his mother invited him and his 2 sisters on a vacation cruise for a week. He said yes, and they'll be leaving in a couple of weeks. The downside is no spouses allowed. John and I are in our mid-40s. We've been married 25 years. I feel slighted, left out, and frankly disrespected. I'm not sure how to bring this up to him or to his mom. I don't want to cause my husband, who's currently going through a difficult reintegration process, any stress. And I don't want to cause drama with his mother, who regard my speaking up as an offense to her gesture for her children. Please help. Do I just keep my hurting mouth shut?
Oh, man. That's messy.
It was rude for the mom.
Oh, totally.
It would be inappropriate for the wife to make a big stink, because then the husband's in the middle.
Right.
Yeah, vent to us. We'll listen.
Yeah.
And we'll agree with you and let him do his thing. How long's the cruise?
Week long.
It's a week.
So, it's
not
another
the
week.
end of the world, but I totally dig where she's coming from.
Yeah.
Like 4 tours, year long.
Uh,
Just a couple weeks back with him, and he's already leaving for another week to go on a cruise with his 2 sisters and his mama.
Yeah, you got to suck this one up, I'm afraid.
You think the problem is that one of the sisters has an iffy spouse situation, and so it was just cleaner to leave everybody out?
Probably.
Is
Or
that the guess?
maybe the mom's being straight selfish, though.
I think, it's traumatic
I
on
mean,
mom to think her little boy's off
Exactly,
to war.
right? I'm not downplaying the fact that that's a big deal. Like, your kid goes off to a war zone. Like, that's a big deal. But at the same point in time, husbands leave your mother and father. Like,
he doesn't need to choose. That's what I say. Wife has to be quiet.
Yeah.
He doesn't. They'll put him right in the middle of it.
We totally dig on the fact that this sucks. We totally dig on the fact that mom was rude for doing this, was not thinking of the spouses at all. But at the same point in time, you might just have to.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, agreed.
Right up, straight.
Thank
Thank you for your service.
Yep. Secular says, because your husband is having a difficult time reintegrating, I do think you should keep your mouth closed. The reason you and the other spouses weren't invited may have been the cost involved. I mean, that's not a positive thing.
That's fair.
Right. That's not a reassuring thing either.
Yeah, I'm just too cheap.
Great job, Secular.
Man, I just wouldn't do that.
Winning it.
I feel like you got to do it right. If it wasn't, then Mama may have wanted her brood around her and no one else. You say you and your husband have been married 25 years. That would make you a military wife. By definition, military wives are resilient and independent. If you feel you will be at loose ends while your husband is with his mother and siblings, I suggest you and the other excluded spouses plan some activities together to pass the time. If you all like each other, you could have a ball. Later, when the time is right, you and your husband could plan a private getaway just for the 2 of you.
I agree with the ending.
All right, Mom, don't do that. Dear Life in the Path, I've been married for almost a year to an amazing man who surprised me with a stunning, large engagement ring. I'm a modest, humble person, and often find myself hiding the ring because, although I love it, I don't like the attention it brings. My proud mother-in-law often brags about the ring to others. She recently started working at the same place I do, and has been showing off the ring on my finger to my coworkers. It makes me very uncomfortable because I like to stay as professional as possible. My mother-in-law is so sweet that I don't want to hurt her feelings. I also don't want to stop wearing my ring to work because it's so special to me. What do I do? I mean, you're going to run out of coworkers eventually, right?
They've all seen it. I'm pretty sure that's my wife right there.
It's like, hey, Jimmy, you've seen this ring before. You want to see it again?
She shows off the wedding ring?
No, she's one who just doesn't want to be.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she maybe stopped buying her stuff like years into our marriage because she just didn't want it to. Just didn't want to be a show.
Yeah.
And it would have killed her if my mom was pulling around.
Yep.
But I think it's kind of the same as the last one. You just. I mean, yeah, like you say, there's only so many employees. I mean.
Right, but
yeah.
like, is there something to be said for the fact that like this gal should be able to have a conversation with her mother-in-law that says, "Hey,
I mean,
here's the
that's
deal.
still, yeah,
We're at
it's
work.
a healthy conversation.
I'm
yeah.
trying to be professional.
Yeah.
I get that you're excited, and I am most certainly excited to be marrying your son. That's the reason why I continue to wear this ring. It is special to me. But I don't think I need to be paraded around like we're at Tiffany's. Like it's not a deal. Like just let it be and let me do my work.
I think we both know how that conversation's going to end, though.
Well, maybe you should
that's
bring it
really
up.
great. I'll just say this ring.
Yeah. There's nothing sweetie, there's nothing unprofessional about this. Now
Yeah.
let's go show it to Jen.
Yeah, shut up. It's my life.
Boy, that took a turn for the worse.
Yeah,
Booba.
it really did. I tried to take the high road on that first deal, but then you said, nope, right turn. I went, all right, low road, let's do this. Shut your mouth, Janet.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think frankly, I would be clear that it's just something that makes me uncomfortable. Like if you try to make a case on any other grounds, you can just flat out disagree with what's professional, what's not professional, right? Whether anybody else cares or whether they don't care, right? You can try those grounds. If you say, look, it just makes me a little uncomfortable. Do you mind if we not point it out? And then I would hope that she would respect that.
She's not.
Dan says it's not going to happen.
She's not going to, but I think it
You
might
still
be.
have the conversation.
It might be more comforting for this gal to at least have the conversation.
Yeah,
Because then you can bring your hubby into it and be like, hey, Gerald, I talked to your overbearing mother, and I told her to stop showboating me around like I'm some show horse.
Yeah.
And she's not respected.
Yeah, I mean, Dan's probably right here. Mother-in-law is going to do what mother-in-law is going to do. She work in the same place. That's a bummer. Turned out poor.
Yeah, I'd probably find gainful employment
I
somewhere
mean, she
else. if
seems
my
to like her
mother-in-law-
though. She said she's sweet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
That's,
there's
you
nothing
know,
wrong with being sweet.
She's
ladies.
proud. I mean, here's the deal. She's proud. She's proud of her son. She's proud of
I
the
don't
girl.
think there's anything nefarious coming from the mother-in-law. but
No. Personality thing.
And here's the thing. Most people will recognize that. They're not foolish,
Yeah.
right? They can tell when you're uncomfortable and that you're not parading it around. And like we have grace for mom-in-law. Secular says, it's a little late to do anything now because most of your coworkers have probably seen your ring. That's what I'm saying.
Nice.
What you should have
Foreshadowing.
What you should have done when your mother-in-law first drew attention to it was take her aside and ask her privately to stop because you are a humble person and also concerned it might incite jealousy.
That's always the good deal. Hey, mother-in-law, I'm a very humble person.
Yeah. Unlike yourself.
I'm modest and humble, unlike you, who are like Rue from the Golden Girls. And I think we need to realize that there's a bit of a personality. Stop showboating.
What's this? What's this one here?
I don't know. You're the one.
Dear
reading it.
Live from the Path.
Woohoo.
Is there such a thing as love at first sight?
Oh.
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
According to the Beatles, they're certain that it happens all the time. Hell. Was that clever for 11 o'clock on a Monday? Yes, it was. Love at first sight? I certainly understand infatuation at first sight and like at first sight, but I feel like love actually has the connotation of time.
I was going to go for lust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you,
By
me,
definition,
I'd like
lust.
to love
Yeah.
you. I mean, you know.
Hey, I say the love word around you so that you would allow me to make these lustful acts happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think if you're I can understand having feelings undefined at first sight and then wanting to pursue said feelings into a relationship to blossom into love. Yes. But like looking at somebody one time and going, "Hey, I can't wait until 30 years from now. We're in the middle of a cancer battle and I need to hold your sickly hand because we've spent a life together in a covenant with the Lord." Can I see that? No.
It's asking a little much. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Okay. I agree.
That's in spite of sight.
Right, exact. That's
Yeah.
literally the exact opposite. That is love, in spite of first sight.
Secular agrees. Says there is such a thing as strong mutual attraction at first sight, but love doesn't happen in an instant. Love requires actually getting to know someone. That's true. I've seen those the dating shows where you're the fiance for 90 days and then you get married. And they're right. That time is valuable. Then you can have a forever relationship. I was at my parents' house last night, and like there were commercials for that on. I'm like, good night. Really?
90 days?
90 day fiance.
I've currently been with my girlfriend for 2 months.
Yeah.
That means in 30 days, I got to be ready to
Yeah.
to wife up.
You could be, yeah.
And I've been best friends with her for 7 years prior to that, and I'm still not there.
You better have an impressive engagement ring.
Yeah.
Right?
That could be a shower.
That my mother-in-law is gonna show around at.
Yeah. Look at that. Would you look at that? Okay. Hold on. We got time for one more. No.
What it's see, you already read second. Man, I think about like the place someone has to be to write into Dear Live from the Path and ask about love at first sight. Like that's more interesting to me than the answer itself.
Yeah, true. Yeah, what made them
right,
say
sorry.
that? I mean, there is chemistry at first sight.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people you just kind of click with. You think, yeah.
All right, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Interesting. Here we go. Dear Life from the Path. My husband has less and less interest in me. Oh my. It started with the last presidential election.
What? Oh man.
Rough.
He says I look like Hillary.
This is already great.
Since then, I have cut way back on politics because he doesn't want to hear any of it. Being an activist on several fronts, including politics and other areas, this is a big emotional part of who I am. I get so upset by his silences that I stop talking to him completely. That's mature. I've spent from, this is why Mike does it, I can't help commenting. I spent from feeling so lonely, so unworthy of love, helpless, hopeless, and powerless. I can't take this much longer. He says he wants to be with me, and he has just started private therapy. I, too, am in therapy. Wait, you're going to therapy separately? Okay, I get it. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I was ready to draw up divorce papers when I suddenly changed my mind. I told him I'd wait a year for him to have his therapy, and then we'd review everything we had learned and proceed from there. Have I made a mistake? Right now, I can't stand to be around him. He can be the world's greatest giver, but at other times he's a selfish, insensitive, arrogant know-it-all. This sounds like a politics problem.
Oh, man.
I don't know if I'm still in love with him because he voted for Trump. No, she didn't say that.
Oh, I thought that was serious. I'm like, whoa.
I feel like that's what it is.
I think we all know what happened
I'm
there.
pretty sure exactly that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
I don't know if
very
I'm
many
still in
men
love
on
with
the
him.
line of, I voted for Hillary and my wife and I hate each other now.
Does this proposed 1-year respite have any chance of working?
Can I be the obvious one here? You
I don't know when you're not.
Yeah, that's you know what? That's a valid point, Ben. I appreciate you. Yeah, man. Don't throw the baby out the bathwater. So I feel like if you're working on a relationship together, and you are both in your own therapy on your own without any input from the other into the actual therapy session, and are also not pursuing anything joint, you guys are already acting like people who are not married together. And now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to therapy on your own, but I certainly think it'd be a good idea to throw a mix in of the, hey, let's go to therapy together and do this as a couple, as in, like, not on our own, which is what divorce is connotating.
Yeah. I mean, I think the time is a good thing, but it really does matter what you do with the time. Right. Like, you've been around. Elections be coming up again.
Right.
So
you guys are going to have like a life-altering, shaking divorce moment every 4 years, apparently.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you guys aren't yelling at the local council people, because then you guys are going to have it a lot more often than just 4 years.
Yeah, I would say, yes. Does the year have a chance of working? Yes, it does.
Of course.
I think it gives you a chance where you otherwise wouldn't have one. So congratulations on taking a chance. But there are other steps that you're going to have to take in there, and one of them is not just learning how to live. Like these are not necessarily just individual problems, right? They are together problems. They're problems that exist. Like if you otherwise are fine without each other, like you're not arguing on your own in a room, then the problem really is how you interact together. And so, to Buva's point, although I think it does make sense to continue to go to the therapy that you're currently going to. At some point, you're going to have to deal with the fact of what your lives look like together. And so, if you put that into the year, and probably a good chunk of it, then yeah, I think it stands a very good chance of helping. And I would at least very much commend the patience that says, yeah, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here with your vote, and let's spend some time and try to work this out. But like it does, you do actually have to work it out. You can't. The time's not going to do you any good unless you're actually doing something with it.
Yeah, I agree. I would say step back from politics. You're at a pretty high level, it sounds like, and it's hard to admit it, but all politicians, they use people like you as pawns, and you're just in a game they're playing. Step back, heal your marriage, heal yourself, then decide as a couple how much to get back into it. Take a break. Take a break.
Yeah. What do they say? All politics is local. That's your house. Deal with your own politics.
Yeah.
Dear Life from the Secular says, yeah. Her question was, does this proposed 1-year respite have any chance of working? And Secular says, yes, it does. It appears that in the midst of your pain and turmoil, you experienced a brief moment of clarity. Your decision to give your husband and yourself a year of therapy and then revisit the issue of divorce was both wise and brilliant. You married each other for a reason, unnecessary semicolon. Now give yourself a chance to remember what it was. There you go.
Ben, I lose myself in some of the definitions or descriptions you read out because I find myself laughing at your statements on within the deal.
It's always
Unnecessary quotations, unnecessary parentheses, unnecessary that's true. It is always unnecessary semicolons.
Yes.
Half of the Dear Life from the Path, and especially Secular, does not understand the concept of semicolon in Ben's life.
That's right. All semicolons are unnecessary.
I suggest the complaint line.
There you go. Yeah.
I'd like to complain about unnecessary semicolons.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. Give us a call or a text, 515-517-0085. That's 515 unnecessary semicolon 517-0085. And we'd be glad to hear from you.
What are your thoughts on the Oxford comma? Give us a call.
I'm for it. All right, let's see. Next week, Dan and Boo are going to be out. Right?
No, actually,
we're here.
That's been postponed.
Okay, postponed. All right, so we might just be back
Next week. You will be here.
doing legitimate stuff. We will see you next week. In the meantime, be faithful in the means. God will handle the ends. You've been listening to Live from the Path.